So without much delay, I'm going to just turn it over to Supervisor Brandau to begin with opening remarks and what you're seeing in terms of crime in the county.
Yeah, thanks, Darius, and thanks again. This is like part two. We began this last week, and just having a good conversation among friends about what's going on in our community is fantastic. I'm taking a look at that bridge, Darius. Is that a bridge that goes over the San Joaquin River? What is that?
Well, hopefully someday. But no, it's not. It's in San Francisco.
Well, if we keep driving housing construction to Madera, we'll need a bridge like that.
Yeah, exactly. Over the river, yes.
Hey, I've spoken in preparation for this GV Wire conversation we're having today. I spoke with Sheriff Mims and also Eric Schmidt from our Sheriff's Association, as well as Chief Hall. So I've kind of got a good feel. I'm going to let Mike talk mostly about what's happening in the city of Fresno with Chief Hall and his team. But I'm hearing really good things from Sheriff Mims. She wants us to know that that her officers, her deputies, are out doing their job. In many ways, it's business as usual. So they're seeing some flexibility in crime. Some stats are going up, some are going down. For instance, just an example of what she told me this morning was property crimes are down. So property crimes are down. Those are like residential break-ins and stuff like that. But commercial crimes are up. And if you think about it, Darius, Mike, this makes a lot of sense, right? People are sheltering in place. You never know if those people are like Steve Brandau. They might have a gun or two around. So property crimes are down. But commercial crimes are up. Commercial burglaries are up as many of our businesses are closed down right now, and that leaves them very vulnerable. So we've seen some commercial crime going up. I do know that we've received about 1,000 less calls per week, calls for service from our deputies. And now some of those are self-generated. So our deputies aren't quite answering as many calls by about 1,000 as they normally do. And that's related to COVID too. Our sheriff lets our deputies make their decision. She told me, hey, they don't need to be told how to do their job. They're doing great work. And so they might be, in some cases, not stopping and interacting in this age of COVID and kind of processing whether it's worth interacting when you've got the shelter in place and social distancing. So we're down about 1,000 calls a week. But other than that, we're doing really well. Our sheriff's department, our jail, are being staffed properly. Everybody's showing up for work. These law enforcement officers, as you know, they take their job very seriously. So they are in the middle of crunch time with this crisis, and they're responding 100% perfectly. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, and from the, go ahead, Darius.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Steve, for those opening remarks. Mike, comments from you on public safety and crime in the city of Fresno?
Sure. I mean, from the city side, you know, it is business as usual and then some. So, you know, the same as the county, we have seen property crimes go down. People are home now. And with a lot of our businesses closed, unfortunately, that leaves them prey to some people who want to commit crimes. And we also live in a time where misdemeanors aren't what they used to be, especially now because of recent action taken in the state. What we do know, and speaking to Chief Hall, is that what is up for some reason since about the 16th of last month, from this time last year, shootings are up about 40%. And there are certain crimes, because people are really tense, that have gone up a lot since this time last year. So demand for our officers isn't down, the risk is higher. One thing that's really important is ensuring that we have enough personal protective equipment for our officers and our firefighters, because they're another aspect of our public safety apparatus, and to make sure they have to do their job. They're not going on vacation, they're not taking breaks, they've stepped up, but they're really the buffer we have from an orderly society to chaos. And we have to respect the role they play and make sure they have what they need to keep them safe. one thing I think is really important too is to make sure that if something does happen to them, let's say they are exposed to somebody who may be COVID positive, is that the city takes care of them and say, okay, we don't want you taking any risk of infecting your families. We're going to provide a shelter for you to stay somewhere you can isolate and stay safe. We're going to take care of you as an employer, and just the same way we do for our responders in the health apparatus, for the nurses and the doctors too. So it's important to secure hotel rooms for the officers in case they need that to isolate and keep their families safe.
Great point. Thank you. Now I want to turn it over to Steve and to Mike about what's happening in some of the other cities using drones as an enforcement mechanism. Any thoughts on that? Is the city looking at that? I know Clovis is looking at, I believe it's Clovis, looking at drones as a way of enforcement, or any other topic on law enforcement that you guys want to discuss.
Yeah, very interesting. I have not heard that our sheriff's department is using drones for COVID-19. I know they were just moving into the phase of incorporating some drones in just general law enforcement. And I know a lot of law enforcement agencies are really starting to become more open to using drones and how to use them effectively. So I haven't heard, though, in regard to COVID-19. My only question on that, Darius, is, are the drones made in China? Because China's done enough spying on us over the years. It'd be real bad if those drones are made in China and they're just collecting intel on America.
Great point. Yeah, we have to check into that, Steve. Mike?
No word on if that's going to happen in Fresno. What I would tell you, though, is that I think the city council would want to come up with a policy to make sure how we're going to use those drones in what context, because that's a big change. Of course, if there's anything we can do to keep the lives of our officers safe and the public safe, we're going to explore every piece of technology we can. I mean, we use canines, we use machinery to keep officers safe so that their lives aren't in danger. We use better practices to keep their lives safe. So this may be a part of that apparatus, but because you're going to deal with things like privacy and other things, it's really important that we have a policy in place that respects our constitutional rights, but also supports the needs of public safety.
That sounds good. Steve?
Yeah, Darius, one more thing that I wanted to add was Sheriff Mims was really upset here about a week ago. She found out she was going to have to clear some jail space and do an early release of prisoners. She petitioned the governor and got the permissions so that she could release the prisoners that were essentially criminals that were within the last month or so of the time that they were going to need to serve. So she was able to do that, and effectively she just shortened briefly the stays of criminals that were in Fresno County Jail. But then when the zero balance bail came into play, that was really damaging. So now people are able to bail out with no money, and that really emptied a lot of beds. So the jail, our wonderful jail down here, has hundreds of beds available that should be holding criminals. But thanks to the state of California and the wisdom, we've released a lot more of those criminals. And I think that's really bad in the middle of this, in this crisis. Now, we've had a couple of challenges at the jail, making sure that COVID-19 doesn't make an inroad and create a hotspot in the jail. So we're doing a lot to protect, even the criminals are there, but also the staff, the jail staff under Sheriff Mims that occupies the jail and does a great job there. So we're trying to keep everybody safe in the jail. Thank goodness there hasn't been any serious outbreak of COVID-19. There have been a few who've tested positive, but then they've been isolated and removed from the rest of the inmates. I just wish that California would not look at this as an opportunity to release more criminals back onto the street.
Yeah, so I've spoken to FPOA and, of course, different officers in the Northwest District and Chief Hall about this. And, I can imagine how frustrating it must be when things are mandated by a place, Sacramento. But in Fresno, we're stuck dealing with the fallout of those decisions. Now, this decision regarding the zero bail came from the Judicial Council, which is chaired by the Chief Justice of the Court. And I strongly disagree with the zero bail for misdemeanors, but they actually did a lot of good things for the state in their plan. One thing is they extended restraining orders, emergency restraining orders in certain situations. So for those that may be worried domestic violence is going to go up with shelter in place, it's nice to know that, of course, with the courts being impacted, a person can get an emergency restraining order and have that extended. It's very important for public safety. Allowing technology to be used so that we can still continue the system of justice that we have. But the emergency bail schedule, I really disagree with that decision, because a lot of people don't know that the judges, the justices, they're the Superior Court judges that serve on that council, they're elected. But those elections aren't like a typical election. You're going to call your council member, you're going to call your assembly member, because you're going to be upset that it's an interesting economy. And I'm going to get some flack for this, but some people want to use the police to keep people from assembling as a group because it's a misdemeanor in Fresno now to assemble, yet it's a $0 bail. So it's really a 45-minute revolving door. So it really makes no sense how they want us to use the police power to keep people to socially distance. And I get that. But then they also they want to support policies that have $0 bail. Criminals aren't going to stop just because there is COVID. They're not like the rest of us. And I don't want people to go to jail. I don't like that people go to jail, but you know what? I don't like that there are victims of crime. And I'm really sick and tired of having our hands tied because people that are very comfortable in their offices in Sacramento are making decisions that we have to deal with in the streets of Fresno. And again, I know I'm going to get flack for that. There are some people that can't make that separation, but Steve and I are responsible to the constituents we serve. Crime is the #1 issue, and it's not going to stop. And it's really frustrating for our officers that they can arrest someone for committing what was a crime 2 weeks ago. But because of the new system, they can go and book them, and then 45 minutes later, they're back out, and they're going back to that same environment that caused them to commit a crime again. So it's a bit more complicated than just passing a blanket policy. And I don't think blanket policies are what we need right now in California.
Mike, I totally agree. When you think of what we're asking our officers to do in the middle of a crisis, we're asking them to interact and do their job, interact with the community and still bust criminals. And then they go to all the effort of that and only to see these criminals released early. And that's got to be very frustrating. In fact, indeed, I know it is, because I spoke with both our Sheriff's Association and Sheriff Mims herself. And Sheriff Mims gave me an example of a well-known car thief that was we finally got our hands on this guy and got him down to book him. And he was 45 minutes later, he was back out on the streets. Now he's got such a history that we know he's not going to just sit at home and watch Netflix. He's going to immediately go back out and start breaking into more vehicles. So this is a problem that I have with the whole catch and release concept. I like you, Mike, I completely disagree with that 100%. And I think if we're going to ask our officers to put their lives on the line to catch these criminals, we need to reinforce it and make sure that these criminals spend some time behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they would just stay home and watch Tiger King. That would make it a lot easier for the rest of us, but that's just not the way it goes.
Right?
Yeah, Mike, any comments, any final comments on that?
No, I think that not just with this policy, but any policy, every county is different. Every city is different. And while we really are in this together, the impact of COVID is going to be different for every area. So it's best not to have a one size fits all. We talk about the PPP program. I don't want to get off topic, but we're talking about a relief for small businesses. And it turns out businesses like Ruth's Chris somehow got $20 million when $10 million was supposed to be the limit. And it's things like that that really are frustrating. If they wanted to help small businesses, they should have targeted specifically. So going back to Fresno, dealing with things like crime and our economy, it would be nice if we, through collaboration between the city and the county, and I think we're doing a good job, would be able to have a proportional response. The same way a physician wants a proportional response to what the patient is experiencing at this time, because not everyone's in the same stage of the virus. So you can't just give everyone the same thing. There's different therapies out there.
No, exactly. Just catch and release. So the question is, why do you catch if you turn around and release just 5 minutes later? You're just wasting a lot of our law enforcement time.
Yeah, we're not even letting people go into Millerton and fish anymore. So now we're gonna let our officers fish now.
No, exactly. And putting our officers in harm's way to catch, only to release a few minutes later. It's really, yeah, I don't get that either. Talking about enforcement, is there anything coming from the city or the county once we do open back up? And I guess currently we're looking at May 7th on the city, unless it gets extended. Anything about masks being required as a prerequisite of opening up, or is that off the table? There's been some discussion in some other cities across the country, and some of the European cities like in Austria, as Vienna is opening up, as the country of Austria is opening up, they're requiring folks to wear masks before they are allowed to re-enter. Any thoughts on that, Mike? And then we'll go to Steve.
Sure. So I think everything's on the table right now, and we're still talking about, making sure we take action public health related, because we don't want a second wave. And if there's going to be a second wave, we want to make sure that our hospital care system is equipped to deal with it, and then we have plenty of masks to go around. I wouldn't want to, I think it's great. You had so many groups creating masks for family members and first responders, and that's huge because we need community right now. And if the doctors tell us, the medical experts at the county say, hey, we need masks, we're going to do everything we can. I just don't want to mandate masks if we can't guarantee the supply, because consumers will panic. Now, I have my mask. My mother made this for me, and I do wear it at the office just to keep, make sure I'm not sick, but I always want to make sure I'm being responsible. And I don't want to give any chance of, maybe if I'm a carrier that's asymptomatic, I don't want anyone else getting sick too. So I'm willing to wear a mask. But I think that's something that it is on the table, and we're going to probably, my goal is to work with the business community and the medical community, bring them together and create realistic policies. So as we reopen our economy, which I'm really eager to do, we can do it responsibly and protect our economy by not prolonging this with another wave or a third wave.
Steve, any thoughts on that, county?
Yeah, so of course we're under the governor's shelter in place. City of Fresno has another layer of shelter in place on top of that. Eventually, these will be removed, or we'll move into a new phase where businesses will be open, even under some form of shelter in place. And I think that's the right time. I think the business community, for sure, needs to be at the table. The business leaders that I've spoken with here locally, Fresno-based people, let me tell you, Darius, they're doing a fantastic job putting their plans together. These are very responsible people. And I think that in the specific business, if a mask is required, last week, Mike, we brought up hairdressers, and you were a little uncomfortable how close a hairdresser needs to be to their client. And so I think that, each individual business will have a lot of input, and I trust business leaders. Look, these people want to get back to work, and they're willing to work within the guidelines. All the ones that I've heard from our restaurateurs locally to other businesses, all they want to do is get back to making money, allowing their employees to make money, get back to work, serve us. That's what they're there for. And I know that they're willing to work within the guidelines. So I don't believe any of that's mandatory at this time, but I do know, well, I know it's mandatory in the city of Fresno, but inside the county, we've got some flexibility. But I do know that when the time comes, the business community is going to step up, and they're going to do what's asked of them, but they just want to get back to work. So I'm very confident that all these discussions will be had in a real smart way. I believe in local control. So I hope there's not a lot of mandates from Sacramento. I hope they allow the different regions that make up the beautiful state of California to make some of these decisions themselves.
I think the supervisor makes a good point. Steve's right that before we even really said anything, a lot of businesses did step up, and you would see them, have their employees wear masks. They'd secure masks for their employees. They'd have sanitizer available, cart wipes, things like that. And that was just them seeing what the consumer needs were and meeting them. So that's just the free market doing that. And I think anytime people step up, it's much better when they step up versus there being a mandate. Now, if there has to be a mandate for public health, I think that we've been under that. But the supervisor brought up another good point. Even if the city lifted its order, we are still bound by the governor's order the way the county is bound by that order. And I do support local control. I do support a proportional response. It would be really incumbent upon the governor and the leaders in Sacramento to allow us to handle this with, having public health at the apex of all our efforts, but being able to open proportionately. Because when you look at the top counties in the country, number 11 is LA for infections, and I get that. But Fresno isn't even close to that. So we need a response. We need to be responsible, but proportionately.
And Mike, that's really very important to me, almost ultimately important. When you see what President Trump has done with his 3-point plan, he's allowing the states to experiment and do their own thing, and the states become responsible. And so one state might be able to open up immediately at the end of the month. Another state might not be ready for that. New York, we know, as example, and other states might be further behind. I believe that Governor Newsom needs to do something similar when it comes to the great state of California. We're such a huge state, and our geography is so different from north to south and east to west. And we have very rural areas of California, and we have very urban, and we have some mountainous areas. And so I'd hate to see a cookie cutter approach to the state of California and force Fresno County to act like Los Angeles County or any of the mountainous counties. I think they need to be a little autonomous and allow themselves to make their own decisions. So going forward, I believe that's really important. And I hope the governor gets that message, not to treat us all the same, but some counties might be able to get to the next tier or the next step sooner than Los Angeles County or San Francisco County.
Right.
Those are
brought up the point of hairdressers. I'm going to make another point. This is a couple days later. I really need someone to fix this. I still have a little reservations for the safety of the hairdressers and being so close to people. But, Steve, I need to adopt your hairstyle. That would save me so much trouble.
It's really easy, Mike. And I'll tell you what, I don't own a mask. You have a mask. I don't have a mask. But I will get a mask and perform this haircut on that head of hair, if you like.
There you go.
At a very reasonable cost, a very reasonable cost.
That's great, gentlemen. Great points about, as we re-enter our economy, that each region of California really has its own set of issues, challenges, and opportunities. Central California is so different than the Bay Area and Southern California. Our densities are less, our distances, we have more land available. We're in a farming community, and Fresno folks, Central California folks really have done a great job to make sure that the curve doesn't expand up exponentially as it has done in several other cities and counties across the country, and of course internationally. So I agree with both of you. We need a regional approach to so many things, air quality, traffic, growth, and especially how to re-enter and deal with COVID, because our issues are very different than some of the other regions in California. And again, Fresno folks have done a great job. Central California folks, other counties, we have a map of a chart that we just put up on all the different counties, all the 8 counties in Central California, and how well they have done and how they're doing currently in recovery, number of new cases, and those that have perished and left us. Any final thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
Darius, I really believe, and I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the citizens of Fresno County, the city of Fresno, but also the rural towns and cities that make up Fresno County. I'd like to say I think they're doing an excellent job. Now, this is not universal, and we've seen some glitches, and we've seen some folks do things they're not supposed to do as far as get-togethers. But by and large, our citizens have been doing a great job for the last month, and I believe they'll continue to do a great job. I do sense a restlessness in the community. I think we'll see as the temperatures rise. This week we're going to be in the mid 80s. Next week, we're going to be in the 90s. And we've just got in our DNA, we like to get out in this weather and enjoy the great time of year that it is in Fresno. So I think that we're going to see some pressure. I know there's some restlessness. People want to get back to work. The trick is going to be how to do that in an orderly and safe way, right? Still respecting people's desire to get back to work, but also respect the crisis that coronavirus has brought to us. So we got to keep people safe. I think we can do both. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's what I've seen from our residents. That's certainly what I've seen from our business community. And even our public health department recognizes this. So I give ourselves great marks on accomplishing what's happened so far. And I think we're gonna get through this. And if we don't get too hard-handed on each other, heavy-handed on each other, I think we're gonna get through it sooner rather than later and in a great fashion.
Yeah, I think the key here is a collaborative approach between the city and the county. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. It's okay to disagree. Steve Brandau's constituency with City Council District 2 is different than County District 2. But that's what makes it stronger when we can work together and rule by majority because, look, people have different opinions. That's okay. This is
Did we lose Mike?
Oh, what happened? I think
I don't know. I think he was making a great point, Darius, about collaboration between the city and the county. And I think we need to continue that. Look, Darius, you and I are great friends as well, and Mike is a great friend as well. And we have differences in our opinions on how to move forward with coronavirus. But in general, I think we're mostly on the same page. I think we're realizing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. This week that we're in right now is supposed to be the peak week for impact of coronavirus here in the Central Valley and in California. This week we're in is supposed to be the peak week of coronavirus. So if we can get through this week and things don't seem too staggering or overwhelming, I think we really need to begin next week talking about opening up the economy and not just talk about it, but make some decisions locally, and hopefully the governor will allow us to do so here in Fresno County.
That sounds good. And I think we lost Mike, unfortunately, and we've had lots of technical difficulties today. Again, I'm not in San Francisco. That just happens to be an image that just showed up on my phone. But let me just summarize by saying, and actually there was a couple of points on our on Facebook as well. Ultimately, the consumer will decide when it's the safe time to reopen. Oh, Mike, welcome back.
My battery died. I want you to know I have a lot more power at City Hall than my computer battery does. Okay, so don't worry.
No, we get it. So ultimately, the consumer will decide when it is safe to go out. GBWire on Facebook and on the website is running a poll right now, asking folks, two things. If restaurants open up on end of the first week in May 6th or 7th, do you feel comfortable going out to restaurants knowing there's new protocols on every other table being available only? So there's a poll. Please go to GBWire Facebook page and fill out that poll. Also, the other questions we're asking is, what is the first thing you would want to do once it is safe to be out? When the veil is lifted or the ban is lifted, or the recommended shelter in place is lifted, and you get a chance to go out. What is the first thing you want to do after that is lifted? Are you comfortable in going out to restaurants? We know a lot of our fantastic restaurant operators have been very hurt. There's numbers floating around that 30% of restaurants in the country will not reopen after COVID because of the financial losses that they've incurred over the last a few weeks. So
Darius,
good news. Let
me jump in, Darius, and I want to answer those questions really. I don't want to impact your poll, but I'll tell you that I'm going to be at a restaurant the first day that it opens, because I really miss going out to dinner with friends and enjoying a great conversation. It's not as much fun on Zoom. It's not as much fun on the phone. I like to be with my friends and have a great time. So I'll be at a local restaurant on opening day, whether that is on May 7th. If Dave Fansler opens his restaurants in May 7th, I'll probably be at one of them. But whenever that is, I do miss that. Another thing that I miss is shopping for some of the items that have been declared non-essential. I mentioned last week in our Facebook podcast last week that I need to shop for some furniture, and it's unavailable to me now. So I look forward for shopping for things that are right now considered non-essential. But I also would like to play sports and go to the theater, and enjoy some of those things. Get back to enjoying those things that we've come to enjoy in our country. And so I'm looking forward to getting back to all of that.
Darius, I wanted you to finish your point real quick.
Yeah, the point I was making is, the SBA loans, the new stimulus plan. There is I don't have the exact numbers, but there's between $50 and $100 billion available for some of the businesses that couldn't get the first round. There's many of our subcontractors and trade partners at Granville that applied, but were not successful in getting any of the PPP loans. We're hopeful that they can going forward, especially some of the smaller organizations that have really have suffered substantially. Mike, closing comments?
Yeah, so, we're talking about crime, and economics does affect crime a lot. When people face a dire situation, when there's poverty, unfortunately, it's one of the inroads to more crime. It's just a reality. So anything that we can do responsibly to help folks not have to worry about the anxieties if they're going to be evicted or what they're going to do with their jobs. That's why it's so important when we talk about public safety to also consider economics and what we're able to do to provide relief for folks and just reduce that anxiety. Now, it's a really big deal that we have our entire first responder apparatus helping us, whether it's an EMT with American Ambulance that comes to your door because you're having chest pains, or, Lord forbid, someone steals something, from a package at your door. You're going to call the police. Now, that person's not going to go to jail because it's a zero bail. But the point is that our police and fire departments haven't stopped. While other people are at home and they're sheltering in place and they're keeping us to flatten that curve, which is great. There are a lot of people out there that they really are our heroes. Our nurses in the hospitals, our doctors in the ERs that are potentially exposed. It's really important that we have that gratitude for them. But they're also counting on local electeds to do their jobs, to be able to keep us safe. So that's part of the reason why we collaborate with Steve, and we can disagree. I was kind of making that point before my computer died. We can disagree. It's healthy. This is a democracy. But in the end, this is not about being a Republican or a Democrat. This is a very apolitical moment. And when people are facing a crisis, the last thing they need to worry about is higher crime. They want to feel safe. And our police officers and firefighters are out there battling fires, answering your calls and doing everything they can to keep you safe. If you, ever want to, once this is all over, if you see a firefighter or an officer, please thank them for what they're doing. It's a very big deal. You see a nurse, you see a doctor, thank them for what they're doing. It's we couldn't do it without them. We really couldn't.
Mike, that is a great point. Here at Fresno County, I mentioned in my opening comments that our sheriffs are out there. It's business as usual. It's game time for them. They're out in the community doing what they're called upon to do. We're seeing very little deputies refuse to come to work for whatever reason. I mean, very few, and those are only because maybe they have kids at home and they need to stay at home, or maybe somebody they need to take care of. But the numbers are so low of deputies that have had an impact. They're all coming to work, and I think that's fantastic. We do need to be very thankful. I wish that that was true across the board for government workers. Government workers enjoy usually a pretty decent paycheck, pretty great benefits. And I think in times like this is when you have to earn all that stuff. And so for every department, not just law enforcement, but everybody that serves from government serving the community, they need to be at their desk, manning their phone, doing their job. And so I do appreciate, I think that law enforcement has taken the lead on this, and they're there to work. They're getting it done.
Yeah, if only they could, you know, do everything by the phone or video chat. But you got to be out there when you're battling a fire or trying to stop someone from committing a crime.
Yeah, it's hard to put handcuffs on a person over Zoom, right?
But that's right. That's right. But, you know, Supervisor Brandau is correct. We've had the taxpayers pay for our city to function. I know there was a little bit of a concern that some of these orders don't impact government workers. People are relying on their taxpayer-funded services to continue as much as possible. Your garbage being collected, that has to continue. I mean, there has to be sanitation. Clean water being delivered, that has to continue. So it's very important that we really show people they're getting value for their money. And you know, there's a reason why Supervisor Brandau and I, we still work every day. There's still work to do. We're getting paid by the people to do a job, and we're going to do it whatever number of hours it takes. And same with our first responders, and same with someone that works in code enforcement or that works, you know, in the planning department. You know, they may work remotely, but it's still all hands on deck during this crisis.
Thank you to both of you, gentlemen, for coming on. Hope to see you next week. Don't forget, tomorrow at 6 p.m., we have another Facebook podcast with 2 physicians, frontline physicians that are battling COVID on our behalf and helping our community. I also want to remind all of us that Central California residents have come together like never before. We are an incredible community, lots of camaraderie, people making face masks for other people, for law enforcement, for frontline folks, for healthcare folks, organizations raising money for food bank, for Marjorie Mason Center, for again, frontline healthcare workers, making sure they have the supplies that they need, and we can put food on the table of those folks that are underserved in Central California. So Central California has come together incredibly. This is about the grace of our nation, grace of our community, and our valley. And with that, I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll hope to see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. and again the following week with both of these gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.